right, well, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Aftershocks on the CMS Podcast Network. And joining us on this episode, we got the guitarist and vocalist from Baltimore doom outfit, Serpents of Secrecy, who are set to release their debut full-length record called AVE VINDICTA out October 31st. Let's welcome Todd Ingram and Mark Lorenzo to the podcast. Guys, thanks so much for coming on. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. Right. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely, man. Well, first off, guys, congrats on the release of the record. I know this one is obviously, really extremely personal for the whole band. It's been an insane journey for you guys to get to this point. And, before we get into talking about the new record and, of course, the tragic passing of the late, great, Reverend Jim Forrester, let's start things off to when the band was first conceived and you guys started to gain some momentum. I remember things were really looking up for you guys back in 2017. You had signed to Salt of the Earth Records. You played the Maryland Doomfest that year as well. And I remember reading that you guys had already at that point, you had already at that point overcame so much to get to where you are then with the record deal and the appearance at the festival. So just to start things off, man, talk about a little bit about the band's initial journey, prior to the tragedy in 2017. I mean, what were some of those obstacles that you guys originally faced and overcame to get to that point where you'd gotten signed and you were really starting to make waves within the doom metal scene here in the U.S.?
Sure. So Scott Harrington from Salt of the Earth Records had a long friendship with Jim, right? Okay. And was trying to help him put together something. Jim was really was always hungry to play and write and create, and he kind of pulled together people from different groups, including Johnny Throckmorton from Alabama Thunder Pussy. And this is back, I want to say 2014-ish. Okay. And so we had some initial groupings of that where we started writing in Baltimore. It was Chuck on drums, Aaron, and I hate that I can't remember his last name at the moment. But it was Aaron from Connecticut, who was in a few bands up there as well. He was on guitar, and Jim on bass, myself on guitar. And we wrote a few songs, and then Jim got sick. It was when liver failure really started kicking in for him, right? So it was the first of many times that I've heard a doctor tell me he may not make it. But he survived that, but what that did is it did stop Serpents for several months as he needed to heal and get better. And by God, his liver started producing good cells again, and slowly the stream started going back up. Then we ended up. He asked me to help him with a 60-watt Shaman reunion, and we went to Europe and played some dates in the States as well. And then we were all pretty dedicated to trying to keep that machine rolling. And then it just, between life circumstances, it just didn't work out. And so we then decided to pursue Serpents full time after that. Okay. And there were many days when it was just me and Jim, right, in this basement writing songs. But eventually we ended up with Mark on vocals, fantastic talent, and Steve Fisher on guitar. And once again, Jim was plagued by liver issues, and he was in a coma. Just a few weeks before we played that show at Doomfest. So we've all been through many times of when we didn't know if we were going to lose our dear friend or not, and we'd see him rise again and just hit the stage like a monster. It was always beautiful to see that.
I remember getting that message. I was actually in Lubbock, Texas, beautiful Lubbock, Texas, at the time, and I got started seeing the messages coming through, and it was like I'm training down there and stuff, and I look at my phone and I'm like, oh, good God, like what's going on? And it's Jim's not doing well. Jim's in a coma. This does not look good. And it's like, holy shit, man, wow. You know, I get back, of course, immediately it's like Doomfest is off, shows are off, recordings are like none of that, like whatever. Jim's got to get better. And basically every time Jim was, you know, in his you know, conscious, he would say, "We're playing the show. We got stuff to do. We got shit." That was what he would say. And so, you know, and I'm like, who is this bionic man? Like, I've been playing with him for like a couple of years. You know, I knew him probably maybe the least out of the group, but he was the most welcoming dude, you know, just from a newer guy to the scene with them. Big hug at the first practice I tried out, you know, like literally like, "You're in," boom, huge hug. That's it. And hugs after every practice. You know, Jim was the best. And, but just, you know, I'm hearing this guy say this, and we're all kind of having side texts of like, okay, just make sure he feels good. Like, yeah, we'll say, yeah, we're playing Doomfest because of course we are. Yeah, sure, buddy, anything, you know. And I'm like, there's no way in hell you were unconscious. And you know, and he went back in, I remember, because he was out, and then he went back in because he was still having issues, and it was like, there's
that's right. He was released, and a few days later had to go back in. And I got to tell you, the roller coasters that we all went through on that. I mean, obviously, you know, we weren't the one in the hospital, but just, you know, as being close friends and loved ones and family, and it was a rough ride. But to play that show, and he said, if I have to play that show sitting down or laying on a stretcher, we're playing it.
Yeah. And we all said, okay, we'll sit down too, you know, like we'll just have a seated, like, you know, like I don't care, like whatever if you got to lay down, we all lay down and we do some weird performance art Serpents of Secrecy show, and everybody goes, "What the hell's up with this band?" I don't know, you know, they all just came out, laid the fuck down. I don't know, like, but anyway, yeah, he man, yeah, dude, what a guy, God. It's good. This stuff's good. It's good to get out, because I feel like sometimes, Todd, you know, you can probably second this, is like, it's so brutal what happened, you know, after all these things, go through all this and then have what happened, that sometimes you forget to get those moments of laughter. And Todd actually sent a message out with like a former interview that we did right at the Doomfest thing, you know, and all of a sudden seeing us sitting around a table joking and, you know, being silly. It's like, you know, we gotta keep, you know, I always keep Jim high in my heart. The guy's always got a smile on his face, so like that's never tainted. But my side of it, sometimes I get stuck in all the dark of like, man, what could have been, what terrible stuff. But then the minute you tell a story about him, you're laughing every damn time. You're laughing, man. So
yeah. Well, and what I'm going to do now is just for some of our listeners who aren't aware of you know, what transpired about 3 years ago, you know, in December of 2017, you know, unfortunately Jim was, you know, he was murdered. I mean, it was a tragic murder outside, you know, of a tattoo shop he worked at in Baltimore. And I mean, it's a pure definition of tragedy. He was unprovoked, senseless, and I can only imagine, you know, really how devastating of a blow that was to each one of you guys on a personal level, let alone as a band member, you know, and as you guys are sitting here right here, and I've read a lot of great things about him. You guys obviously confirming all that right now. And, you know, so obviously at that time, the last thing you're thinking about at that time is, you know, and for quite a while after that, is finishing this record you got coming out, AVE VINDICTA, that you were recording at the time. So at that time, I mean, how far along was the record, you know, the recording before he passed? And when did you guys decide now as a band that you were going to go ahead and finish and release this right now?
So as far as how far along the album was at that point, when Jim was murdered, all of the core tracking had been completed, as well as many of the songs were 80 to 90% done with regard to overdubs and so forth like that. Okay. So that's all Jim on that entire album. It's all Jim. And now I'm trying to remember the full breadth of the question, but we had released those 2 singles for the Maryland Doomfest just to get some stuff out there, because you know, it had been such a long time working on this. We wanted people to hear what we were doing, in at least something in advance of us playing the show. But then I remember that night when Mark and I were standing outside of the hospital after we found out Jim had been murdered, and we're just standing there, and we both knew it. We just said, we've got to finish this. Little did we know the house of horrors we'd have to go through after that, but we knew at that moment that album would need to be finished. But it did take some time for us to be strong enough to do it, because we had to go through some pretty big trials, literally.
Sure.
Well, we were 2 weeks away from going in and finishing, I believe.
That's right.
Because it was a week before Christmas that Jim was murdered, and then it was a week after that, post December or whatever, I forget exactly, but we had studio time December 29th or something to go finish the album. And so obviously that gets canceled. There's no way, we're not going to fit. We knew we had stuff to do, but it wasn't happening anytime around all that. And
Sure.
I remember going in when we finally did go in, and it was weird because, again, I was kind of the new guy here, and of course super welcomed by everybody. I mean, I don't mean to say that like, oh, I was the hired gun or anything. It was awesome. Just the treatment. These guys in here, Jim, of course, but everybody in Serpents, they're special, man, and they're good people. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And I sure, especially through all this, I wouldn't do it. But they had all the songs structured, and a lot of Jim's tracking was done. The Jim tracking was done before I got in. They had a previous singer, and that kind of fell through. So I never heard any tracks he did. Todd kind of was like, hey, just do your own thing. We just want to hear your own thing, when I was going to jump in. And I had played with a different band. Todd and I had played in other bands, and we met each other that way. And, hit it off and all that. So I got to kind of do this cool creative thing over top of all this. And I hadn't finished all the tracks. So we had done maybe 4 by the time we released 2 singles, and I think we had maybe 2 more done. And some of them were halfway in the works, and we were going to work them out, as we went. And losing Jim, some of the songs on this lyrically are completely different than what they would have been. Because I had that, whatever you want to call it, ability to kind of turn this album, because they weren't done. They didn't have lyric. And so the topics of some of those songs are directly there, and I'm sure anybody that listens to it will get it right away. There's a couple tracks that are really, really hit it, and I think we really got to nail some. I mean, it's somber, but it was cathartic. The day walking into the studio, I got there before everybody else, because I was kind of the main thing doing the vocal tracks to finish some of this stuff. And I had worked out some vocal stuff driving to Chuck's wedding, the drummer. I was like riding out. He got married out in Delaware, and I was driving, and I just kept listening to everything on loop, and had a couple epiphany little moments, little nuggets that I was like, I want to build off of that. Todd came in second, and helped guide some of it, because I was like, I don't know about this or that, and I'm always open to like suggestions. But it was really hard going into that studio the first time without Jim, and it was just me and Jay, at Magpie. It was like, oh my gosh, you felt like you're holding back tears the whole time. I mean, it just felt very tough, very empty. It was hard, but then as different members show up, the warmth starts entering the room, and the 4 of us get together, and you start feeling the 5th. Right. It was something powerful. And the last sessions where we finished this thing up, where we finished out some stuff, there's a track called Lament that's kind of like no vocals and stuff. It was a thing that Jim had laid down, and it was, oh, do we make it a song? Do we try to do anything? And we were all like, I don't know. And I said, I don't really want to do like words or vocals over this. It just all came together in the studio in a way that was like, I had no idea. I did not hear that before I showed up that day.
Right.
Which I'm kind of neurotic in a sense, where I want to have everything buttoned down usually. And for that to happen on multiple songs, multiple times, so much inspiration, it was kind of ridiculous. I think there was a lot of pent up feeling and emotion, and it everybody just, the floodgates opened, the ideas were just vast, and everybody was on board with everything every time. And I really am happy with what came out, you know, and I think Todd probably feels pretty good about it too. And he played some
absolutely
ripping solos on first takes that were mind blowing. I mean, it was just it was so damn good.
No,
man,
it really was. I mean, I'm
not tuning our own horn, but it felt great, you know. I mean, if people love it, if people hate it, I don't care. I'm happy with that. That was beautiful, man. You know,
all that matters, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Now, I you know, obviously everybody's gone through something, you know, I mean, just realistically, everybody's gone through something, and certainly,
and we've all are going through a whole bunch of crazy shit.
Right,
year,
exactly.
Right now, yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, everyone, can I just say something? Calm down. Calm down. We're not having a civil war. If you're out there, stop talking like that. We're all brothers and sisters here.
Exactly.
Calm down.
Yep.
Okay, back to everything else. Go ahead.
When you're going through something as serious as this, and having a brother killed, of all, you know, is you know, short of a your own kid being killed, I think is the next thing. And you know, it's unbelievably difficult, and a lot of people, I would say most people, when that happens, whatever they were doing with that person is just done. Everybody has the standard bullshit that we've all heard in the interview before of, we're going to continue on for him, and but you know, everybody says that, but then there's the realization of, you play that track and it rips your fucking soul out, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys went through that. How did you get past that, and how long did it take before you could start working again without immediately being brought back to, you know, the moment of loss?
Well, I don't think I ever got where that fully, but
right. There was it was so weird because we texted back and forth and chatted back and forth, and I've mentioned this before, where we'd made plans. Hey, let's get together in a couple of weeks, and maybe me and Steve will work out some guitar parts, or let's get in the jam room next month. And there would always be, you know, we all have real jobs and things and families and things that we need to take care of, and there would be scheduling conflicts. But also, as you mentioned, you know, just me trying to work out parts. I'd try to listen to the song, and I wouldn't get through 10 seconds, and I'd just say, nope, can't. But eventually we all came to agreement. We need to get in that studio and finish this work. And it just so happened, wasn't planned this way. It just so happened that the dates that were open in the studio fell on the 2nd anniversary of him being murdered.
Wow.
So that's a pretty daunting thing to arrive to a studio under, right? And then, as I've told other folks, that I felt bad because, as Mark had mentioned, you know, normally my work ethic is I've worked out at least frameworks of what I want to do, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, listening to things, and I hadn't. And I was really feeling like I'd let Jim down. But as Mark had related, that once we got in there, it just all went boom, 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 and we were done. And it all fit just right.
I hadn't sung a note, like, other than a little bit of humming in the car to write, you know, get the lines of whatever I was doing, or make sure the lyrics fit the thing. I hadn't sung, like, definitely not full voice, definitely not with a band. If there was one thing that I felt like bad, was like, man, my vocal muscles are crap, you know. It's been 2 years and I've done nothing but have a few drinks for my friend, you know, like, it's just shit. Okay. And but in that, I think some of the emotion comes through, like, and I had to swallow a little pride on that. I'm like, man, my voice isn't doing what I normally like it to do sometimes, you know, and but that's actually not even, like, honestly, that's not as important, you know. Like, it was like, actually what's important is people hearing what we're feeling right now. and warts and all kind of a thing. And I think I think it does come through on the album. And I think that whether or not you knew Jim, whether or not you know the backstory, I think you can hear the emotion in it. I think you can connect it to things, and purposefully, lyrically, it's vague enough that I want the songs to be for anyone who has experienced loss, has experienced, pain, fear of death, fear of getting older. I mean, because we had already addressed that. We had one of our songs that we had recorded before. It's talking about basically how time crushes us all. It was one of our kind of big endings on a song, and it was just that idea of like, God, I'm just getting older, and
Right.
Yeah.
is this have I passed as good as it gets kind of moment where it's just so all those fears and stressors and all that, but the main thing that I hope is in there is that sense of hope, that sense of family, and that's where I'm actually not kidding when I'm talking to people out there about don't go crazy about an election or a president or a politics or any of that. Like, we're all in the same country together too. Calm down, take a breath. Be good to your neighbor. Be good to your friends. Don't write off your family because they voted for the other guy or something. Like, just calm down and give yourself a moment to like realize what's important. Because Todd and I, had to realize, we were forced to realize what's really important, in a terrible way. And I don't want to hear about terrible violence erupting or anything, because it's just going to be more people feeling like Todd and I do about what happened with Jim, and that's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to be good to people. And Jim, I always joke when people never have seen him before, see his pictures of the tattoo on the head and the bandana. Oh my gosh! I'm like, he's like a pit bull, big baby pit bull, looks crazy, looks like he's totally a rocker, but man, the heart of gold, the sweetest, quickest to smile, quickest to give you a handshake and a hug. So, I try to keep that close to me of how he behaved, and how he thought and carried himself. And, he kind of laughed as things got a little crazy and thought it was a little funny too, and found some humor in it. And I think we've kept some of that in the album too, is a little bit of humor, a little tongue in cheek about some of these moments of just like, don't take yourself too seriously, and then you don't do stupid shit, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm just an idiot, man. Who am I? Like, I'm not going to go lose my mind over somebody. I'm just a moron, right? So it's fine.
Nice. When you guys were finishing, and once you got to the point of where you could really work to get the album done, were there any tracks that kind of strayed far from the original concepts because you had been away from it? I know we all know the reasons why, but you had been away for a year and a half, 2 years on some of this stuff. Did some of the original ideas change a great deal, from where you were started?
I would have to say, instrumentally, no. But as Mark has mentioned previously, that some lyrical content did change, and I think it was Bleeding Still. I had not heard the lyrics to that until I heard Mark sing it.
Yeah. And that one, that one hit me, and again, I was driving out to Chuck's wedding, and I just had this lyric kind of pop in my head, and I was like, I almost had is it too corny? I'm sure every musician, every dude, you've had that moment of like, is this too on the nose? Is this too on the nose about what's going on? And I wanted it to be a community song, like of all of us and what we felt, So the first lyric of Bleeding Still is the concrete that you hits us all, that he felt. And I wanted people to feel that. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know about this. It's a totally different thing. one thing that came from it was a lot of emptiness and stillness in that song. It's a very simple kind of track. When I was hearing it, I didn't know what I wanted to do over it. And having this happen let me actually sit in the stillness and leave it open, leave it hollow, leave moments for people to like, for it to resonate. The lyric hits you and then there's a pause and you just you sit with that for a second. And it's very simple, pretty direct, but I knew it when Todd reacted pretty strongly, you know, because I was in the studio alone and I kind of got that started, and then he came in and I was like, hey, this is one that we started working, and you know, he was just like, oh man, you know, it pretty much wrecked him. And I was like, it's wrecking me too, but I didn't know, is it corny? Is it too much? You know, you're like, yeah, I don't know. I've never written anything like that. So, you know, it was
Perfect.
it was hard. It was, you know, crazy, but that one definitely was a big dog leg. And it was, you know, it's so weird because that was one that I was having trouble writing for. I was like, I don't know what to do. It's very open. So it was like, there's a lot of options. I was landing on stuff that I was just like, meh, you know, sure, this, or I could sing about that. And it didn't really have a topic. It didn't really, some of the other songs, like the guys had, the single that we're releasing here soon, Heel Turn, like Chuck had a song name and he was like, hey, I want it to be like this kind of like, you know, heel turn in wrestling where the guy that you like all of a sudden becomes the heel and this and that. You know, I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. Like I'll write about that.
Right.
So some of the songs we served up that way where we kind of kept the name. Warbird's song was we called it Fuzzard on our first, you know, and so it just gave me this inspiration. Actually, they had it written as Fuzzard, and I was just like, it sounded like the thing I love about rock. So when we did Warbird's song, I was like, the song is essentially about that first time you heard that distorted guitar or that drum and what it did to you and how you almost chased the dragon, how you almost chased that for the rest of your life. And that's why all the old guys are like, you don't understand. I saw Ozzy, and you know, like whatever got you is the thing that just, it's like, it's in your blood.
Sure.
You know, but Bleeding Still, we just didn't have anything to it. It was kind of like it was in the middle. It was like this chill song. It was cool, but I just had no ideas. And then, you know,
I used to joke about that one with Jim because I said, this is going to be that Bon Jovi, what was this song about a cowboy, right?
Wanted Dead or Alive.
How did I not hear this?
It's a tour bus with the raindrops sliding on the glass window and all that. And I was like, that's what this one's going to be, brother. And it completely took a different turn, but it turned out beautiful.
Nice.
Well, the other part that's really funny about that song is at the end. I mean, it's very heavy, you know, this driving part. And I remember specifically, we were at practice, and this is terrible. This is going to get me a million hates, but you know, I just like being silly and making my friends laugh. So the Harvey Weinstein had blown up, and somehow I'm freestyling lyrics of like, I don't know what we're doing. And I was like, just following the guitar with something about like, I'm Harvey Weinstein. You're just a potted plant to me, just to make Jim laugh while he's playing, which he was incredibly. So we're just, I mean, like just children, like first grade children giggling, your grab ass, the whole thing. And it's just, I love that in my mind that song is like one of the heaviest like weight of songs in the album because of what it means now. But I also have this goofy ass grab ass memory of playing it with Jim. So it's kind of beautiful in that sense. Just like us being stupid, you know, stupid guys just having fun like every band in a band room, and then like, you know, bringing it all around and kind of dedicating it to him. So
no question.
Somewhere I have that.
Oh no, that can never come out. That could never come out.
Sounds like the bonus track to me. Well, is for both of you, and I'll let you both take this individually. Is this album a release that you can now or will ever be able to sit down and listen to, or is it literally the proverbial closing of the chapter, you know, that you need to emotionally?
I'll let Mark take that one first. And
I was going to serve it up to you first.
Okay.
Go ahead, Todd. You do it.
Well, when we were going through the mixing and the mastering, which has just been completed within the last few weeks, I've listened to this album quite a lot. And it's taken on a more celebratory feel at this point. There's still times that are still get you right in the heart, right? But it's a feeling of pride that, you know what, we did good, and we know Jim will be proud of it.
Sure.
So yeah, I have no problem listening to it now.
Yeah, I agree.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I also did read about a video that you guys have come out as well that covers 2 tracks on the record. The 2 last tracks, Broke the Key and In the Lock, which I would assume by their song titles, they're connected somehow. Tell us a bit about both those tracks and the video for them. It's supposed to come out right around the time when the record's released, right around Halloween, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was a riff that I came up with, both parts right here in this basement with Jim. And it was just this really hard driving, straight ahead rocker in the first part, and then this really cool, like, bluesy swagger on the back end. And I think this is another example of when you've got where Mark probably had a different direction, probably initially with it, and then when it came time to track it for the album, that's the part where we're talking about some tongue-in-cheek, where we basically ended up doing a Reverend Jim full-time gospel hour on the back end of it, and had a blast doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah. That one, it's funny for me lyrically. I had worked out a lot of the actually, while Jim was still with us, I had worked out Broke the Key, and this was originally, again, goofy stuff, titled UFO 1 and 2. Chuck was like, "Oh, I'm thinking about like UFOs and stuff like that," and I was like, "I don't know shit about UFOs, so we're not doing it." So, man, I can't stand that ancient alien stuff. It's on the History Channel now. Like that, I don't know what's happening. Aliens, man. So I'm just like, whatever. Okay. I'm a fan of Carl Sagan. But so anyway, it's like, so I kind of wrote the first half, and it was this powerful thing, and it's kind of, just talking about, well, I won't go into it too much. It's kind of take what you will from it. I think it's got some points and whatnot. And at the end, the second half, I always kind of wanted to do a sermon, and we even did this song live a couple times with Jim, and because I think we did it out at Guido's or something like that. And I remember what I would do is I would just introduce the band in a sermon-y way. You know what I mean? I would just, here's, just riff and just, the big tall man T.I. up in the sky over here playing the lead, blah, 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 and then he does his little lead lines, and then, Chuck D, Public Enemy #1 back on the drums, blah, blah, just like whatever, and I would just riff that, and I was always like, I want there to be some kind of a sermon thing. Now, when you lose your great friend, your bass player, your bandmate, your brother, and you've had an idea of doing a sermon, obviously things take a turn, right? You're like, sure. Yeah, we're going to do a real sermon. And this was one of those epic moments in the studio where I was like, I still want to do the sermon. I want to do, I want to do this. And I just sat down. I wrote what I was going to do while we were listening to it for a minute. I was like, okay, if everybody's cool with the sermon idea. And I was like, I don't know. This is what I'm thinking. And I wrote it out. I went in, I did the whole thing in one take. And I'm like, I don't know. What do you guys think? And everybody's like, holy shit, it's awesome. It's so good.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, cool. And then Chuck's like, but I need to get in there with some like, shaking the tambourine. And I'm like, hell yeah. So he gets a tambourine. And then it's like, we need some clapping and some backup and all that. And it just kept piling on. But those moments where we've been you've ever been in a band and you're forcing stuff in to make it better. it's the opposite. It was just so much fun, and every idea was just like, oh my God, yeah, go with it. Take it to the nth degree, right? You know? So at the end, you know, we've got chanting sides saying hell yeah and god damn back and forth, you know, which is super Jim right up the middle there.
Right.
And you know, we're getting serious, we're sermoning, but we're also trying to kind of steal your money a little bit, which is awesome. I love like the irreverent reverend that is Jim. So, you know, I mean, I think we just like somehow in that moment, you know, in those few hours messing around with that song, it was bigger than the sum of the parts. It was bigger than the idea. It was better than anything I could have ever thought of. It was so much cooler, you know, and I'm like, it's got one of my favorite lyrics I've ever written in my life in it. It just, man, it was just cool as hell. And that was one of those magic moments that you can't explain. You don't know where that inspiration and all those ideas come from. And it was all of us kind of running on a lot of energy and, you know, just brotherhood in that moment. And I've never experienced anything like that in a studio.
No.
And the video of, there's a lot of symbolism in it, and at the end, it conveys that spirit of celebration of Jim.
Awesome. Right. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah. What from what I've obviously read and heard, you know, with the music so far, man, I think you guys, you know, did it as good as job as anyone could have done, you know, for anyone in this circumstance, you know, in this situation. You guys did a great job, I think, really paying homage to Jim, and I'm sure he'd be thrilled at what you guys did with this, you know, from the sounds of, you know, the kind of person he was. And that's definitely definitely, you know, kudos to you guys for doing so. You guys right now, I know Todd, I know also you've been involved in another project, you know, recently with your some of your bandmates from King Giant that called Pimmet Hills. Tell us a little bit about, you know, more about that project, what you're doing right now with those guys.
Well, so when Dave Kowalski told us that, he, you know, real life gets in the way sometimes, right? You know, he has a young daughter to raise, and he just came to us and said, guys, I can't do the playing out live thing anymore. And, you know, there were no hard feelings. We were disappointed to see him go, but there was no animosity. He encouraged us to continue with the name of King Giant. And the more I thought about it, I just was like, you know what? It's not, without Kowalski, it's not going to sound the same. And it's not like we're Metallica or some other big legendary global rock band, right? That has this big thing to carry on forward.
Yeah. Well, Mark, what about you? I mean, are you doing anything right now in any of the projects you got going on?
So right now, I drum in a band called Crawler that is totally on the other side of the moon from this stuff. It's I got to follow in the footsteps of a really serious drummer and play with some of my buddies, and it's some really aggressive, brutal stuff. I had to learn how to do blast beats, so that's nuts. Wow. You know, that kind of thing. But super fun. Just beat the hell out of my drums. I've always drummed kind of in the background, but never in any of the bands that I've been in. I just do it for fun and whatnot. But so that's cool. And then I've been in talks with some of my other former bandmates and some other projects as well. And there's some rumblings, but you know, with the COVID situation, it's all kind of casual, and just maybe we go up to a cabin and jam, two of us or whatever. But there's some talks in the works with some of the Kaya friends and stuff like that. We'll see where it goes. Hey Todd, we lost you for a minute there.
Yeah, we lost you.
Yeah, give us a rundown.
Go ahead and finish off. Yeah, it's going good now.
Okay, so with Pimmet, so we just decided to start with a clean slate, and it's very roots, blues oriented. We'll still have that sort of heavy doom flavor from time to time in moments, but I think one of the key things that's different about Pimmet is that we'll take those chances live and do extended improv jams where one song can last 12 to 15 minutes if we wanted to. Just depends on how we're feeling. So that's sort of the different take on the approach for Pimmet Hills, and it's been a lot of fun. Really enjoy it.
That's great. Well, it's great. We're looking forward to hear more of that. And once again, guys, I really want to we're getting ready to wrap things up here, but I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking about Jim. And, I know it's not easy to do so. So I'm very, honored that you guys came on to do that for us. And also just to our listeners out there, make sure you go up and you check out October 31st, Serpents of Secrecy, AVE VINDICTA. It's coming out. And why don't you guys go ahead and tell the listeners where they can find the album and any merch from the band?
So it'll be on iTunes. It's on Bandcamp right now as a pre-order. It'll be on every single digital platform you can think of, Spotify, etc. And Serpents of Secrecy.net is a great landing spot to then get to social media and web store and anything like that.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Fantastic. Great. All right, guys. We really appreciate everything, and good luck with the record and everything else you guys are doing, and take care and be safe. And like you said, Mark, right? We're all brothers here. Let's not kill each other.
Yeah.
No civil war.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening. We're all good, man.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
so
believe
much
the
for your
hype. Let's
time.
go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.